Clear also.
Yeah,
At the very least, audio will be recorded. So.
Oh, that's cool.
All right, thank you.
Awesome, thanks. So I have a reminder for everyone that after listening to my really cool talk on web content management, the room E is where they're having the job fair and networking event, and it's going through now. Of course, you don't want to leave this until 1 o'clock.
You want to do a block on Friday? Tell me what time. This time? This work?
I gotta figure it out. I got my meeting with ICE at 10 o'clock.
So if you have a meeting at ICE, let's do it closer to the afternoon. Let's say 2 o'clock.
Is there like a 1 o'clock slot?
It's a lunchtime slot, but I will make it. I will make it there.
Nobody wants to listen to web content management over lunch. I love web content management, but there's lunch. My ICE call can be virtual. It's virtual.
So how about 12:15 then?
Oh, I actually can do it at 11.
All right. So it's 11:15, 12:15, or 2 o'clock. I will put it right now as 11:15 for Friday.
Okay.
So. Anybody have a pen I can borrow? Here.
All right, a couple announcements.
11:15
So,
Friday.
I mentioned the fire marshal. Fire marshal's a mean guy, and if you don't have a chair you have to leave. So I'm going to do a BOF session on 11:15 on Friday to continue. If you didn't have a chair, please join me then. But apparently we've hit the room capacity, and the fire marshal will come and kick us out and shut down the conference if we don't.
This is not a joke. They really actually will shut down the conference.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting on the floor or you're standing in the room, I need you to leave. I'm a horrible person. I'm so sorry. But we are going to be, Kathleen has already offered to come. So, and they're going to bring in a couple more chairs. But again, no seat, no stay.
No seat, no stay.
And they're only going to bring in to the capacity that we can have in this room. Kathleen will be doing a BOF on this exact same topic Friday at 11:15. I'm going to go put it on the board right now. Thanks, everyone.
And the other reminder is the job fair and networking event is going on now till 1 o'clock in room E. So, yeah. Who knew? I mean, it's one of my passions.
Yes.
So the fire marshal has decreed that we can only have 57 people in this room. I'm not sure I count as one of the 57, at least when I looked at the room capacity when I came in. So if you do not have a chair, you are not welcome to stay. I'm sorry. I'll be doing a BOF on 11:15 on Friday on the same topic with the exact same slide deck. So please join us then. Oh, fantastic. Oh, no, that's great. No, it won't bother me at
Do you
all.
mind me standing here?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. Whatever works for you guys.
Perfect.
He's the switch off for the interpreter.
Yeah, but
He needs a chair.
he needs a chair, okay.
Oh, he doesn't need a chair.
You're good?
If it's if you time for him to stand. I know. You want me to put it right over here?
Let me see.
Yeah. There's one more chair now. Over here, if someone wants it. All right, if you don't have a chair, you have to leave per the fire marshal.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to try to accommodate as many people as we can.
Yep.
We can only put a few more chairs in. Then
So there is one more chair here. Somebody would like to.
yes, sir. You can shoot one day.
No.
That's the third. Okay.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm starting at 450.
Oh, really? You got to undercut me like that?
Okay, let me just say this. We're going to go out on the limb. If the fire marshal comes, you all don't know that.
Okay.
Don't remember this face.
All right. Awesome. Well, go ahead and get started. My name is Kathleen Tracy. I'll be talking about.
That's one up front.
Oh, hold on, one more seat.
Blue. Also, we can't put one more directly in front of the podium. I mean, from the pillow, we'll be done.
Yeah, or 2 more people.
Okay.
All right, we'll wait one more second to get a couple more chairs in.
Oh, you want another way? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Also, I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, it's okay.
What we're going to do also is I will allow 2 or 3 people. Will you all, sir? You all can kind of sit up on the credential. Okay. Sir, find a seat in that credential. Two more. One more. Man. Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
All we want to do is the black shirt.
Well, as somebody who's passionate about content, I'm really glad to see there's a whole bunch of others out there.
You just say
No. Awesome. I think we can get going, stay on schedule. My name is Kathleen Tracy. I'm going to be talking about effective web content management in the federal sector. A little bit about myself. I've been working in the federal sector since 1993 because I'm old. I started off as an economist. I worked as a labor market economist, a healthcare economist for a number of years, and then there was a website that needed a labor market economist support called America's Career Infonet that was done through the Department of Labor, which I started on in 1997. Worked there for a number of years. Took a few years off, have kids, and now for the last 7 years I've been supporting a large federal agency. I say it that way because I did not get my slides cleared through the Speakers Bureau, and because I worked directly for that office for 5 years, I cannot claim ignorance like everybody else is going to. So I think it was probably pretty clear by through the presentation who I work for, but I'm not going to actually toss it out there. So I'm here representing my company. I've been working for iStreet Solutions the last 7 years, doing web content management and project management. Now I'm a senior analyst there. My slides are so here are our objectives for today. My W is we're going to talk about strategies for writing for the web effectively. The first I is integration. Integrate mission into your content. We have a lot of great content out there, but a lot of times it's missing the tie back into mission. And then the third part is going to be identify ways you can make Drupal work for you. So quality counts. This picture of the trash bag, trash cans. Your Drupal web content management system is only as good as the content you put into it. People don't come to your site because they're looking for super awesome Drupal site. They don't. You know, they come to expect that you're going to offer them a cool, awesome website. What they're really looking for is the content you're putting in there. And if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. If you've already spent all the time and resources doing your requirements, doing your design, doing your wireframes, defining your workflow, your information architecture, your taxonomy, you've built your site, you've done your testing, you've done your data migration. If you spent all these resources and then put up marginal content, what have you really accomplished? People are looking for your content. Content is king. A well-defined content strategy with objectives that are measurable will improve your content quality. That's what we're going to be walking through today. So every agency has a mission. Larger agencies either directly or indirectly affect the public. And this is where you need to ask yourself, you know, how do your missions matter? Why does the public care? How does it affect them? You know, and I understand there's a lot of websites out there that the end public is not your user base, but we're just going to use that for simplicity's sake today. But your mission is setting the stage for telling your story, what you do and why it matters. And I would say that when you're talking about writing, when you talk about the who, what, where, when, and how, mission is why. And that's what I found through my career, that what I found that's kind of missing. We're really good about putting a lot of the details in, but relating it back to mission and explaining to the public why it matters to them is a piece that it tends to be lacking a lot of web content when you go through different sites. So this is the introduction. We're going to go through a lot about what is defined as good web content. And then as we work through that, then we'll move into talking about time and mission, and then we're going to actually go through an example talking about press content, where, because I bet all of you have lots of press content, really tying back into how can you make Drupal do a lot of your heavy lifting. So the first one part I want to talk about is active voice. And in this slide, you can see the construct between an active sentence, which is the top section, which is Dave makes cakes, and the second structure, which is passive voice, which is cakes are made by Dave. The active voice is just a simpler construct. It's easier to read. It's easier to digest. You don't have to actually think about the sentence as much. And you know, most of your web content should be framed in terms of active voice. You can use passive voice. You know, it's not a hard and fast rule. However, if by focusing on active voice and trying to have at least 75 to 90% of your content, you're automatically starting to increase the readability of your content. I mean, we've all heard the jokes in the federal sector about, you know, people make fun of the IRS, but I think they actually do a pretty good job of theirs making complicated information simple. But it's like the wall of words that you can't understand, you know, the tombs of legalese that you have to wade through. Just by switching most of your phraseology over to active voice, you've already improved readability. And that's the measurable outcome that I would say that, you know, if you want to take away to really improve the content on your site, working towards reducing readability from postgraduate level down into at least the high school level towards middle school level is really going to make it easier for the public to consume your information. So following along with this is a short sentence structure. This is an example I took from the plain.gov website, which I thought was actually pretty clever. Well, you can see, I'm not going to read it to you, but the short sentences are definitely easier to read. It simplifies, it improves readability. The first sentence, the before sentence, has a 12th grade reading level. The after is about 7th grade. It's a little under 7th grade. It really does make a difference to take the time to actually work through and coming up with a shorter sentence structure. It can be really challenging because that's not how we write anymore. You've worked through all the way through high school not writing this way. This is how you wrote in elementary school, you know. So it's kind of a change in mentality to actually walk through a different way of writing. But for the public, you're going to find, even though these are both active voice, the after sentence is much more simplified. And again, using short syllable words. This is a screen grab out of Word. I use a lot of Word, and everything based off of Word in here because Word tends to be something that everybody has on a federal computer, so let's go with a tool that everybody has. So Word, the thesaurus is your friend. Oops. I'm touching things, I'm sure. The thesaurus is your friend. So, you know, what are other terms that we can use for assignment? And I tossed the little synonyms factor here. You can see task, job, project, duty. These are all terms that you could substitute into your content. The ways I say could is that you still have to read it and make sure it makes sense. Sometimes the shorter word is not going to be better. This is where it's kind of like the art of writing good web content. But by, you know, simplifying out and taking complex words and reducing them down by using a synonym that's shorter and briefer and still does the same job, you're reducing the complexity of your writing. So we were taught, and this is the model that we were taught in school, you know, when you're writing write a paper, you do your background, and then you're going to give all your supporting details, and then you're going to wrap it up with this big conclusion. That's great for writing your papers. However, in the world of web, we're going to invert that pyramid. This is the journal front first, and then you go into the details, and then you give the background information. This also works well with the fact that a lot of people, you know, skim when they read the web. So you want to put the details that matter first in the first paragraph, first 2 paragraphs, because after the second paragraph, there's a really good chance that they may go off onto something else. So you want to hit them with the big punch first. So they're going to put the most critical information first, which is here as marked as the conclusion. So be consistent. So this is the style manual from the GPO, but each agency is going to have their own style guide. I know the agency that I've worked with uses AP Style as their base style guide because that's the Press style guide. This is where you should have documented out all the different consistency measures that you've come across in your site. So, for instance, accepted spelling. You know, I think website's a term that gets moved around a lot, so it could be website capital W, website 2 words, website one word, all lowercase. I've seen many of them. Define one, stick with it, move forward. You can also have a list of words that you have decided you don't want on the site. For example, one of my favorite is pursuant. The only time I ever really see pursuant is in a federal website talking about some type of a legal issue. And you know, it's an awesome word, I suppose, if you're a legal person. But most of what people who are actually wanting to read your content may not be. So generally, you can substitute or according to, and that would be what it would, like your style guide would actually recommend that out. But yeah, your style guide should really be a living, breathing document that you share with all your writers, so everybody's writing consistently across the web. Your site should be have a unified approach to content. So your style guide is kind of giving the framework or the backbone that everybody should refer to follow along and make sure that their content. So one writer and another writer, they don't even need to know each other per se, but they're writing consistently. So use of bullets. A little example there on the use of bullets. So how you use bullets, I have found, is different between if your information is already cleared for distribution or if you're in the middle of writing it. So I don't know if many of you had to deal with the situation like, here's my wall of words and it's already cleared and you can't touch it. You can't change anything. So then you're like, okay, what can I do with this? Well, bullets is one of the tools you can go to where you go, any lists, can I break this out and make, so I'm now using bullets to provide visual, relief to my eyes. I'm not touching it. So I'm using it to kind of break up the wall of words or the text. But if I was writing my content myself and before I got in there before the clearance process, bullets really show emphasis. You're allowing people to kind of look through and they can kind of quickly pick out stuff that's important. So, but you don't have that luxury if the information's already clear to you, because if it becomes clear to you and it's like you can't touch any of the words, you can't do any of the words. Phraseology, the source, the active voice. One of the things you can do, at least to try to make it better, is to do to work with bullets. So again, with bullets, this should also go back into your style guide. There's multiple ways to do bullets. With right here, let's see, I have them capitalized with no punctuation at the end. Well, that could be your rule. It could be that you have some type of an end mark. You don't do capitalization. Whatever your standard is, I would go ahead, I would define it so it's consistently done across your site. The other thing is that I want to bring up about bullets is the ordered list versus unordered list. For the most part, you should be using the UL tag, unordered list, little bullets like we have up there. Ordered lists can be appropriate though if you're doing a step-by-step explanation or an outline, but where numerical order matters. For the most part, it doesn't, but it's one of those pet peeves that I'm sure it's only myself that ever has it, but when I'm looking through and I see these numbers, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. These should just be little bullets. But all of that should be documented in your style guide. So the other thing you have in your toolkit for that already clear content that you can't touch, that you now have made some bullets out of, is you can chop up the long paragraphs. is, other than keeping the critical information up front, generally, you'll get your sentence, the sentence structure will be, your paragraph structure with sentences will be, you get 5, 6 sentences in there. And you can break that up generally and keep the flow going by maybe doing 2 or 3 sentences depending on the length. I've seen some really horrendously long paragraphs, sentences that can be their own little paragraphs. It's not a great solution, but it's pretty much the only solution you have when you have already clear content. The other piece you can do is add images for visual interest to try to provide some eye relief, especially images that tell your story. Images for just images' sake is probably not a good use of anybody's time. So this is my question, to myself when I'm working and writing content is, can my mother, grandmother, son, brothers, aunt, cousin be able to understand this? Generally, it's one of the least tech-savvy persons I don't want to pick on my mother because my mother actually has a degree in computer science. Yeah, she's pretty good at this stuff. My eldest child, however, has never gotten into computers at all. He's glued to his guitar, knows nothing about computers. He's the person I actually would reference. My younger kids are actually all tech-savvy. It's the oldest. Talking about, would Evan get this? The other thing I bring up is think about people outside the Beltway. We are all really used to federal content and the federal world and how the federal government works because in some way, shape, or form we're touched by it in this area. So it's almost in our blood. Thinking about especially friends or family who are not here, it's a different perspective sometimes. I remember way back, because I'm old, talking about mobile development and looking at mobile saturation of different products, and it was just like, I was like talking about Android, iPhone, and things like that, and this was back, 10 years ago where the adoption rates were different, and it was like, well, it's great, iPhone's awesome, but if you really look at the saturation markets, they're the urban areas, so what are we doing for the non-urban areas? And, people here were like, well, it works here. I'm like, well, yeah, it does, because we're an urban area. But what about, the non-urban areas who may not have a carrier that can support, because I think at that time it was only Sprint that had iPhone capability, So my friends, I grew up in Vermont, friends would go skiing, and they're like, I have no cell coverage. I'm like, I know, only Verizon's going to work there, and they don't have an iPhone at that time. So it's, again, being realistic and thinking about the world outside the Beltway. So, spell check your work, grammar check your work, have somebody else read your work, because sometimes there'll be those incorrect words where they're spelled correctly, but they're being used incorrectly, which this one is my favorite here. Clam's a great word, just not in that context. But yeah, nobody wants to show up on the front page of FARC. Or be called out on any website because you've made a silly grammatical or spelling error. I can't spell at all. I don't know who got the genes in that one, but I did not. So I misspelled picnic in a spelling bee. So I recognize my weakness and I make sure somebody else always reads my work, and I always spell check. So readability, I've referenced it a number of times, but as part of your Microsoft Word suite, depending if you have the option turned on, you can have, as well as part of your spell check and your grammar check, you can do readability statistics, and I highly recommend turning it on. There's other tools out there, but this is the one that goes with Word that's on everybody's desktop. So in my speaker notes, I'll be putting my presentation up. I actually have the link over to my Office that actually goes through the whole formula for how the Flesch-Kincaid reading using grade level is actually calculated. But effectively, it's a formula that's based off of the length of the number of words in your sentences and the number of syllables in your words. which is why I spent a little time on both of those. Is this a perfect proxy for increased content quality? No. However, it's a decent one that you happen to have at your fingertips that I would really consider using. I don't know why the slide on this side keeps coming out. I'm not touching anything, so I'll have tech support look at that. Now that one's out. But it's a good proxy. It's something that you can actually use and say, okay, this is the before, and we're going to try to get it down to another level. And you can do it in the after, and it's measurable. I mean, sometimes it's very hard to find things that are actually measurable, but as a proxy for better web content, it's not a bad direction to go. So it goes back to, mission is, did I answer the why? Why the content matters. I've read a lot of great content that tells me all about certain federal programs. I love federal network security. I love the trusted internet connection. However, what's it matter to my parents? I don't know from what I just read. So, as part of writing, you need to address the why as well as the who, what, where, when, and how. Acronyms. We love our acronyms here in the government. I love it. But we love acronyms. So some of it is, some acronyms here are so common everybody actually doesn't know them. Some, like the GSA, is a great example because I think outside the Beltway, except for certain scandals, it's better known as the Girl Scouts of America. It is so, and this really came home to me. My parents had come to visit. My husband and I both support a certain federal agency, and we were talking to each other. My parents were like, "Listen, Mom," and then they finally got done with the conversation. They like, "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about." We had used enough acronym, and that they had lost track of the thread of anything that we had talked about. And again, be sensitive to it. I know the general writing rule is first instance, but when you start tossing a lot of acronyms in there, it can be really hard to keep track of it all, especially if you're using ones that the public doesn't really use, like CBRNE. How many people run around and talk about CBRNE? Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives. So, it's what everybody talks about, right? Actually, this is what my husband and I did talk about, which is why my parents were totally lost in the conversation. If you read your things and you're starting to lose track of it, you already have lost all your readers. It's okay to redefine your acronyms again if that's going to help you keep track of what it is, and because really the end story is for readability for your folks. Now I know that's going to knock your Fletch Kincaid, because of course now if I've spelled out CBRNE, it's long and they're like complex words. So again, it's a rule of thumb, but I would say CBRNE is worth writing out at least twice, depending on the length of the article, because it's a long acronym. So, training. Depending on the size of your web program, you have probably a core set of staff that does most of your writing, and then you have everybody who gets to write other duties as assigned. So they don't write for a living, they do budget for a living, and now it's budget time, so now they have to write something that's going to go up on the web. What I would do is make sure you have institute a good training program and institute a process for internal communication to keep everybody up to speed on things. So, for instance, having a list of your writers so where you can put out, hey, we did an update to the style guide, or here we're going to have these training opportunities, or just a reminder that, hey, if you're working on something, let us help you before it goes through clearance so we can make sure it's good for the web. It's a good thing. The other thing can be challenging, depending on the size of your agency, is keeping track of who actually all your writers are. So to let people know, hey, if for some reason, if any of you ever leave, please let us know who your replacement is or is going to take over your duties so we can help them do a good job going forward. It's not that people don't want to do a good job writing for the web. They either don't know how or they're overwhelmed with everything else they have to do because now all of a sudden they're having to do this too. And you need to figure out ways to make it easy for them. The easier it's going to be is that you'll have a higher adoption rate. And the key thing is to get in before the clearance process starts. Because once the information's cleared, it's gone through the executive secretariat, and you're like, yeah, you got it, and that's what you're going to have. And that's what's going to be up on your web pages from ad nauseum. Last piece is it can be hard for people to repurpose content, so they have this fact sheet and they're trying to work it. It might be easier for you to say, just take the salient points and rewrite it, versus trying to go, okay, let me take this sentence, and if I make these sentence structure, if I switch it around and I put these words in and change it, maybe it'll be easier. Some people can work that way. Some others, it's like, we'll take the bigger themes, and then you might want to just rewrite it. So, end user. For many agencies, this is your primary audience. I know, like one of the websites I support, this is not their primary audience at all. Their primary audience is federal law enforcement officials, so it's not their gig. But I'm using that as just as a proxy. The public is task oriented. They're coming to your site because they're trying to do something. They're not there to read it. They're not there to stroke it. They're not there to go, ooh, isn't this a beautiful Drupal website? They're there because they are trying to accomplish something. And they may be going in your site from a search, so they're going in directly to the page that they want to go to. They're not necessarily going to your top page or your landing page. They've done a search. They know exactly where they're going because they have a task to accomplish. So this is where connecting your content, as in how do you address what the public wants to do versus what you want to share with them, really comes into play. And this is where Drupal starts coming into play for really helping you take advantage of your user surfing behavior. So first you want to identify your top pages, which is where your robust metrics program that I'm not going to talk about, but you should have, really comes into play. And you'll want to set a schedule for rechecking those, because the top pages of the sites that I dealt with 5 years ago and the top pages right now are actually probably 75% different. So certain ones have come along and made the transition as a top page, but other ones have changed because the mission's changed or the mission's focus has changed. And usually you look at your top pages as these are the pages you really want to optimize to try to share back what your story is. How do I need to give them more information on this topic? What else can I share on this? How do I share more about what we want to get out to the public on this page? And then how do we automate this process? Because really what you want to do is put the information where your eyeballs are. So we're going to use press content as an example because I bet everybody's agency, some way, shape, or form, does press releases. So to simplify the process, think about the anatomy of a press release. You have that signature block that has the release and the contact information. Generally starts off with for immediate release, and then it's just your office's members and who you're supposed to talk to. Think about making that a separate field in Drupal and have the text that's 95% already there, already a part of that field. That you can override for that 1/2 of a 1% chance when you're going to do a joint press release with another agency. But for them, or you want to give a different telephone number. But for the most part, that's a pretty static piece. Put it in a field and then double check it when you're loading your content. But then you don't have to deal with cutting and pasting it in. Do you normally do photos in your press releases? Yeah, so if you do, set it up that it's an automatic field that you can just add in and have as a default image that if you don't have anything else, you're going to use your department seal, and have it set up so it's really easy to put your caption, your alt tag in. It's all set up to go, so you don't have to think about it. You're not trying to put it in line. And it can add to your consistency on your page that it's always going to show up at a certain spot. For your main copy, for the most part, you may, if you've gotten rid of the signature block, now be able to use your press release lead as your summary. So if you put it in your body text, the summary will be just the front part of it, as long as you can keep your place line, Washington D.C. dash. As long as that could be displayed in other places and can be a part of your summary, now all you're doing is really pretty much cutting and pasting the press release into your Drupal, thing, and you're close to done just by making a few simple adjustments to how you have your template set up, like your content type in Drupal. Does this save a ton of time? No. Does it save a ton of time over time? Yes. Depending on your agency and how many press releases you put up. I mean, I was working on one of the main websites, 5 or 6 a day. And so it starts adding up, and and then of course you do a number of them every day, and then it really starts adding up. So now, when you start putting your press content in this way, now you can start sharing your press content across your top pages. And you can do that either by your top 5 or your top 7 or whatever odd number tends to work pretty well. Or you can use taxonomy to tag and do it in context. So I'm only going to show you the top 5 press releases that is actually related to this top page you're looking at. Generally, you can do press releases, speeches. I discourage testimony just because the testimony titles tend to be really, 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 really long, and it just kills your display. And I'm not sure anybody in the right mind, other than Congress and reporters, really do read testimony. I don't think it's a hot press bed of activity from the public. You can always have it available, but I don't think that's where people are trying to go. If you are a agency that's cleared to do A/B testing, that's actually, you can see whether you get better conversions on your press releases if they're in context or not. The agency I work for has not really gone through A/B testing. I think they can say the acronym, but it really hasn't been embraced there. And then once you do this, you can set it up as a reusable block that you can use around your site on different pages. But again, I would spend metrics going down deeper into the lower pages once you've optimized the top ones. So this is my cross-referencing slide, not that it necessarily is clear from this image. Other things you could put on your top traffic pages, if conversions and signups to GovDelivery is important. I don't know if all your agencies are using GovDelivery. The one I support does. That would be something you could add in. More like this. Highlight other content that would be related to the top page that they might be interested in. The other would be help cross-pollinate similar content across the federal agency. The public doesn't need to understand how the federal government is set up, and when you start going through the executive branch and all the different agencies, it can get really complicated. Like thinking about travel security. You got the FAA, you got the NTSB, you got TSA, and you got NASA, who all have roles in air security in different ways. We don't need them to figure that out. What we can do is help them, though, that if if there's federal agencies who are doing similar work than you, that they may be interested in. So I'm dealing with a travel page over at TSA, and I want to provide a link over to travel.state.gov because there's probably information that they're going to look for over there. That's a synergy that we can provide. It should be seamless to the user to get to the information they're looking for. They should not have to figure out the org chart. So tying this back into writing Drupal requirements, which could be its own talk on its right, so I'm just going to do some high level. Be specific and make them measurable. As we were talking about making measurable differences to content, I know we all want an awesome site, but to tell somebody it's an, the site shall be awesome, that's not measurable. How do you measure awesomeness? Well, other than me sitting up here in front of you all. Just kidding. But the site shall have a machine-readable sitemap for all published web pages. That's something that's measurable. It's there or not. We're going to use USA Search. If you're using Solr, obviously you're not using USA Search. When I say determine the syntax, your agency will probably have a syntax that they prefer your requirements in. For here is like the shall structure. And then the one I really want to emphasize is code versus content. Your website requirements will actually be greater than your Drupal requirements. And that's cool, and that's okay, and that's what it should be. So for instance, you will have a website requirement that every page in the footer will have a link to your privacy policy or to your plugins. That is a website requirement, but it's not a Drupal requirement because that's content. You, as the content provider, are actually going to create the content on the page, and you're going to put it in the footer. That information, that's not a Drupal requirement, which is like putting together this view or how I want to have my that Drupal block or those fields defined. Those are going to be Drupal requirements. But you want to actually collect all your requirements, including, and then you should split them out over what's going to end up being in the lane of code versus what's going to be in the lane of content. And there'll be a number of both of them. So, in summary, we've covered a lot of tools for writing for the web, ways to integrate Mission into your content, and then identifying ways that you can have Drupal work for you. Hopefully gave you some hands-on ways to really do content improvements in your site, ways to talk to your Drupal developers, and I'm happy to take any questions. And again, we'll have a BOF on this at 11:15 if you have friends that weren't able to get in the room.
I just want to comment on the thing about acronyms. I found that a big problem. I was sitting and reading this thing and talking, and I felt like standing on this thing. I didn't even realize no one was using acronyms. It's a big problem in writing. I see this a lot where last connect public. And with acronyms, you can spell them out, but a lot of times you can write around or refer to something in another way, like a non-acronym. Of some sort. It is really important to avoid that as much as possible. Or you can bring in certain departments or certain people's names. There's a lot of ways to get around those acronyms.
Yeah, one method they did is that after first instance of the acronym Department of Homeland Security, we would use the department. The department. So, I mean, other than the department's a little long, but it's not a horrible solution, versus having either using the acronym DHS. I mean, one of the things I found is when I was working on America's CareerInfoNet, the acronym for that was ACINet, which, when you ran it through ScreenReader, became ASINet. And so we're like, oh, you know what? Let's start calling ourselves CareerInfoNet, versus going by ASINet. So but yeah, I think that's a good point. Coming up with alternate ways without actually having to spell out that acronym.
Sometimes when you're writing something, you're talking about what happened. I found a lot of ways to get around that. If there's certain people in the department did something for something. I found that a lot of times I do have to use it a little bit, but I can cut way back on it. The patent office is separate than
Yes, they do.
If you say patent trademark office, you're not saying the whole thing, but it needs to go in a document. Everyone knows. Yeah, DHS, everyone knows what that is, except outside the state.
Right.
So definitely, I really agree with what you a lot. I've been involved in the website where they completely focus on technology and ignore content. They act like there is no content. Like there's nothing to screen, and those websites are never successful.
Awesome. Thanks. Any other questions?
You mentioned that the users of the site shouldn't have to know the org chart.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen many government sites where they've really taken that advice to heart, and you do know the org chart, and you are looking for what a particular unit within the agency does.
Mm-hmm.
Often can't find it on government.
Yeah, so that's how you can get around that is actually, one, in your About section, you should go through the org chart because that provides transparency. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it really should be providing information to the people who are paying the tax dollars that are running these sites. And then cross-reference each piece of content for what office it is. So, if I was working on critical infrastructure that's run by the Office of Infrastructure Protection under NPPD at DHS, I would have it branded down to the office level, and then it would go over to their office page, where then they would go through their 6 sectors that they go into more detail on. But that's how you can kind of connect it. But what you really want to do is keep the org chart part talking about what, the actual guts of how the office is set up, and keep the programmatic information out where the public can actually get it to it in context. Again, like critical infrastructure is a great example. What does it mean until you actually see it in context? It's one of the bigger struggles of terminology I've ever come across, because everybody knows what it is when you start saying water, electricity, but as soon as you say, start putting, rail systems, people go, oh, I get it. But other than that, it's just a horrible term. But yeah, cross-referencing it so you actually can go through. And I've also heard different rules of thumb on how deep you go. I actually think it's a good idea to go deep because, it's the American public, they deserve to know. Any other questions? Well, thanks for sticking through the crowded room, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I know you guys. I did some work for you. You did some work. I've done. I worked on UScourts.gov.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with Mahama and John and stuff like that. Oh great.
Yeah.
I'm Kathleen.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my fingers are cold.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I recognize your name.
Yeah. That was really good. It's not emphasized enough. The content. It drives all this crazy. Like you see all these. They went to site. Oh, Drupal developer, and they live piece because of it. Okay. And who's actually making the site?
Right. Exactly.
And
that's actually
really good that you did this. I think this will help people a
Awesome.
lot.
Thanks.
Yeah.
On the question about acronyms, another technique is to pull a leaf from the accessibility standards. Use the ABBR tag,
Oh yeah.
and
But
every time you use the acronym,
yeah.